Beyond the edge of the known universe, a signal called Earth by name. The cosmos is vast, older than memory, and quiet beyond comprehension. Humanity had always looked to the stars with a mixture of awe and longing, never truly believing that the darkness held anything that could speak back. But in the year 2187, that belief changed forever. It began in the observatory of the New Earth Space Agency. A team of astronomers monitored signals from the farthest reaches of the universe, searching for anything that might suggest intelligent life beyond the Milky Way. Among them was Dr. Lena Koval, a woman of unwavering curiosity and determination. She had spent her life chasing whispers in the void, and nothing, no failure, no skepticism, had ever dimmed her hope. On a quiet Thursday night, as the twin moons of Earth reflected faint silver light across the observatory floor, the signal arrived. At first, it seemed like nothing more than cosmic static, the usual background noise that filled the void. But then the patterns became clear. The signal was structured, precise, almost impossibly deliberate. And within it was a single, unmistakable phrase, Earth. No one believed it at first. It had to be a glitch, a hoax, an error in the sensors. But as the team rechecked every calculation, every connection, the truth became undeniable. Somewhere, beyond the edge of the known universe, something, or someone, was calling Earth by name. The revelation shook humanity to its core. News traveled fast. Governments debated, scientists theorized, and the public oscillated between excitement and fear. What could possibly exist so far beyond the stars, and why had it chosen to reach out now, in the year 2187? Dr. Koval and her team faced the monumental task of understanding the message. They could not decode it fully, but certain elements suggested intelligence far beyond human comprehension. The signal contained a sequence of mathematical constructs, musical harmonics, and geometric designs that were both alien and beautiful. It was as if the universe itself had whispered, "We see you. We know you." Yet, amid the wonder, there was unease. Humanity was no longer alone in its own mind. For the first time, the Earth felt small, fragile, and undeniably exposed. Leaders debated whether to respond. Could humanity speak safely into the void? Or would any reply announce its presence to forces it was not yet ready to understand? The world was divided. Some advocated for silence, fearing a cosmic threat. Others, inspired by the possibilities, urged engagement. And through it all, Dr. Koval felt the pull of curiosity stronger than fear. She believed that the signal was a key, a door to knowledge and truth beyond imagination. Humanity had always been explorers, and now, the universe itself offered a path. As the observatory hummed with activity, the signal continued. It repeated, subtly changing each time, as if teaching humanity to listen, to understand, and perhaps to respond. In the patterns, there were hints of history, of civilizations that had risen and fallen long before Earth had even formed. The signal suggested that intelligence could endure, spanning epochs, galaxies, and cosmic events that humanity could barely imagine. Dr. Koval worked tirelessly. Sleepless nights blurred into long days as she and her team attempted to replicate the signal, to respond in kind, and to grasp even a fraction of its meaning. They realized that to comprehend it, humanity would have to evolve, not just technologically, but philosophically. To communicate with the source of the signal, humans had to think in ways that transcended language, culture, and even the limits of the brain. And then, one evening, as a faint aurora danced across the horizon of a distant desert, the signal changed. A new sequence emerged, one that resonated deeply within every person who listened. It was no longer abstract. It was direct, almost intimate. The signal now carried something like emotion, a subtle echo of awareness, as if the universe itself were reaching out, aware of Earth's existence as one conscious entity among billions of planets. The team was stunned. Humanity had always wondered if it was special, if the stars had eyes and ears for life. Now, for the first time, the universe had answered. Yes, it seemed to say. We see you. We know you. You are part of a grand story far beyond your comprehension. But along with the wonder came questions darker than the void itself. Who had sent this signal? How far did their influence reach? And perhaps most unsettling of all, had Earth been called into something it was not yet ready to face? Dr. Koval knew there was no turning back. The signal had opened a door, and humanity was about to step through. What lay beyond was unknown, but the choice was clear. Either shrink in fear and remain silent, or embrace the call and discover what the universe had been waiting to reveal. The edge of the known universe was no longer a boundary. It had become a threshold. And beyond it, something waited, a consciousness vast and ancient, reaching out across light years to name a small, fragile blue planet, Earth. The days that followed the discovery of the signal were unlike any in human history. Cities were alive with speculation, debates, and quiet fear. Governments convened emergency councils, scientists spoke to the public in every language, and ordinary people watched the night sky with a mixture of awe and anxiety. For the first time, humanity realized that the universe might not be silent, and that silence could be deceptive. Dr. Lena Koval and her team worked around the clock, translating the signal into a form humans could begin to understand. It was difficult. The signal defied conventional mathematics, blending patterns, frequencies, and symbols in ways that seemed impossible. Some elements appeared to encode advanced physics, far beyond humanity's current understanding. Other elements carried hints of history, stories written in waves of energy that had traveled across billions of light years. Each message was a piece of a puzzle that stretched across time and space. At first, there was disagreement on how to respond. The Global Council, an international assembly of leaders, considered silence the safest option. They feared that answering could draw attention from forces humanity was not ready to confront. But others argued that silence was a surrender, a refusal to embrace the opportunity that the universe had placed before them. Humanity had survived countless crises on Earth. Why should the unknown be any different? Despite the debates, Dr. Koval believed action was necessary. She proposed a cautious response, a signal crafted from humanity's mathematics, art, and music, encoded to communicate intelligence without aggression. The message was painstakingly prepared. It contained the basic constants of physics, the structure of DNA, the works of human art and literature, and simple, universal mathematics. Most importantly, it carried a single word repeated in all the major languages of Earth. We. Humanity had spoken. Humanity had answered. The transmission was launched from the newly completed Event Horizon Array, a massive network of satellites designed to send signals across unimaginable distances. For weeks, the array hummed with activity, sending pulses of light and energy toward the source of the original message. Every pulse carried humanity's essence, its curiosity, its hope, its flaws, and its dreams. People around the world waited, holding their breath, wondering if the universe would respond, or if their words would vanish into the void, unheard and ignored. Then, the unexpected happened. The signal changed again, and this time it was more than a message, it was a pattern of interaction. The sequence arrived in layers, each one more complex than the last, as if the sender were teaching humanity a language of light and resonance. The pulses seemed almost alive, flowing and reshaping themselves in response to human attempts at comprehension. It was a dialogue, subtle yet profound, the first real conversation humanity had ever had with another intelligence. The psychological impact was immediate. People reported feelings they could not describe, visions of distant galaxies, fleeting impressions of civilizations older than the stars, and a deep awareness that humanity's existence was part of a larger, interconnected story. Many were overwhelmed, some feared losing their minds. Others felt euphoric, as if the universe had opened a door to a level of understanding that was normally forbidden. On Earth, new alliances formed between nations, united by the shared purpose of understanding the signal. Old conflicts seemed trivial compared to the vastness that had suddenly become personal. Humanity's perspective shifted almost overnight. The fragile blue planet felt smaller, yes, but it was also connected to something unimaginably grand. And with that connection came responsibility. Dr. Koval knew the challenge was only beginning. Every new transmission, every deciphered sequence, revealed more questions than answers. Who, or what, was sending the signal? How far did their awareness extend? And most importantly, why had they called Earth by name? Each day, the signal became more complex, suggesting a level of intelligence that dwarfed human thought, yet it also seemed to recognize humanity as a worthy interlocutor. Then, one night, as the Event Horizon Array pulsed across the cosmos, something changed. The signal split into two distinct channels. One was familiar, a continuation of the dialogue. But the other carried something new, a pattern of light that seemed to map a path, a trajectory, stretching across galaxies and cosmic voids, pointing toward a destination. It was a path that humanity could, in theory, follow. Dr. Koval stared at the data, her heart pounding. The implications were staggering. The universe was not only aware of Earth, It was inviting humanity to journey outward, to explore regions of space that had never been touched by human craft. Yet with the invitation came a deeper question. Had humanity been chosen, or merely observed? Was this a test, a guide, or a warning? The world held its breath as the Global Council debated the next steps. The decision was unprecedented. Humanity would prepare for the first intergalactic mission, guided not by maps or technology alone, but by the very signal that had named their planet. Engineers, scientists, and visionaries across the globe mobilized, creating vessels capable of navigating the unimaginable distances of the cosmos. The mission was named Aurora, a symbol of hope, curiosity, and the courage to step beyond the known universe. As preparations continued, Dr. Koval realized that the journey would not be simple. The signal was not merely a call, it was a test of perception, of unity, and of resolve. Humanity's understanding of physics, time, and consciousness would be challenged. Every step forward would require collaboration, ingenuity, and courage unlike anything Earth had ever demanded. And yet, despite the uncertainty, a quiet excitement spread through the people of Earth. For the first time in history, they knew that the universe was reaching back. They were not alone, and the darkness was not empty. Somewhere beyond the edge of the known cosmos, something had called them by name. And humanity, trembling yet unafraid, had answered. The launch of Aurora was unlike any event in human history. People across the globe watched as the enormous vessel, a masterpiece of engineering and human ambition, rose from the surface of Earth. It glided through the atmosphere, leaving a trail of light that seemed to echo the signal itself, as if the universe was responding to its own message. Dr. Lena Koval stood at the control center, her hands steady but her heart racing. Humanity was finally taking its first step toward the unknown. Aurora was not just a spaceship, it was a mobile laboratory, a repository of human knowledge, art, and culture. It carried scientists, engineers, and explorers selected for their intellect, courage, and capacity for adaptability. Every individual on board understood that their journey would be perilous. The distances they would traverse were almost unimaginable, measured in millions of light-years rather than the familiar units of space travel. Yet, the signal guided them, a cosmic lighthouse in a dark, endless ocean. The first days of the voyage were surreal. The crew marveled at the emptiness of space, a void that was silent yet full of presence. The signal continued, shifting and evolving as the vessel moved closer to its source. At times, it seemed almost impatient, as if encouraging humanity to move faster, to think deeper, to prepare for a reality far beyond comprehension. The messages were no longer static, they pulsed with a rhythm that the human mind could almost sense, though the meaning remained elusive. As Aurora moved farther from Earth, the psychological weight of isolation became apparent. Communication with home was delayed by hours, then days, then weeks. The crew faced the vastness of space not only with instruments and knowledge but with their own minds. Dreams became vivid and unusual. Crew members reported hearing voices in silence, seeing fleeting shapes in the patterns of the stars, and feeling emotions that seemed larger than themselves. Dr. Koval realized that the signal was affecting not just their understanding but their very consciousness. Then, one morning, the observation deck was filled with an eerie glow. The signal had changed again, and this time it was more than information, it was geometry in motion. A vast structure appeared on the monitors, stretching across the void. It was neither natural nor artificial in any human sense. Its form was elegant, complex, and impossibly vast, a lattice of energy and light that seemed alive. The crew fell silent, staring at the display. Humanity was witnessing something that existed on a scale both cosmic and intimate. Dr. Koval began decoding the patterns. They were instructions, or perhaps guidance. The structure contained hints about faster-than-light travel, methods of navigating the vast distances ahead, and even subtle warnings. The intelligence behind the signal seemed benevolent but immensely powerful. It had anticipated humanity's limitations and was carefully teaching them to transcend those limits. The crew realized that the signal was not merely a call or an invitation, it was a curriculum. Humanity was being prepared to understand a level of reality beyond the physical, where thought, perception, and matter interacted in ways previously unimagined. Every pulse carried lessons, each sequence a challenge to expand consciousness. Some crew members struggled to keep their sanity, while others reported heightened intuition, as if the universe were granting them the ability to perceive connections invisible to the untrained mind. Weeks passed. The journey was long, and every day brought new revelations. The boundaries of physics as humans knew them began to blur. Space itself seemed to bend, and time became malleable, flowing differently around the vessel. The crew learned to navigate using the signal itself, aligning aurora with patterns of energy that existed across galaxies. It was a dance with the cosmos, guided by an intelligence that had anticipated every step. One day, as the vessel passed a cluster of dying stars, the signal shifted once more. This time, it carried an unmistakable greeting. Unlike the previous abstract patterns, the message was simple, yet profoundly moving. Welcome.
You are seen. You are known.
The words echoed across the ship in every language simultaneously, yet they felt singular, intimate, and deeply personal. Humanity had crossed the threshold into a realm where the universe acknowledged their existence. Dr. Koval looked around at her crew. They were exhausted, exhilarated, and changed in ways they could not fully articulate. They were no longer merely humans traveling through space. They had become participants in a cosmic dialogue, students of a universe that had reached out across unimaginable distances to name them, to teach them, and to prepare them for what lay beyond.
And still, the journey continued.
The ultimate destination remained unknown, a place hinted at in the signal but never fully revealed. Every moment was a test of patience, courage, and comprehension. Humanity had answered the call, but the universe had more to teach. And far beyond the edge of the known universe, the intelligence that had named Earth watched, waiting, guiding, and observing. For Dr. Koval, one thought remained clear: humanity was no longer alone, and the cosmos was no longer silent. The signal had called, and they had responded. The edge of the known universe had become a doorway, and beyond it lay mysteries far greater than they could yet imagine. As aurora pressed onward, the patterns of the signal became more vivid and precise. No longer just waves of sound or light, the messages now appeared as three-dimensional projections around the ship, like holographic constellations that shifted and danced in space. The crew referred to them as the loom of the cosmos. Within the loom were shapes, colors, and movements that no human language could capture. Yet, somehow, every mind aboard understood. The universe was speaking in symbols of comprehension and intuition, teaching humanity to see beyond the limits of thought. Dr. Lena Koval marveled at the precision. Each projection contained instructions for travel, perception, and even adaptation. The signal guided them through regions of space where gravity, time, and energy behaved unpredictably. The crew learned to navigate the void not only with instruments but with their minds, sensing subtle changes in the fabric of reality. It was as though the intelligence behind the signal had anticipated every human limitation and created a path that was both safe and transformative. The first direct encounter came in a region beyond a cluster of supermassive black holes. The loom revealed a vast structure, enormous yet delicate, suspended in space like a web of light. It radiated a calm, almost nurturing energy. There was no question that this was the source of the signal, but it defied all human notions of physical form. There were no walls, no doors, no recognizable architecture. Instead, the structure seemed alive, shifting continuously, communicating through patterns and vibrations. The crew named it the beacon. As they approached, the loom's projections merged with the ship's sensors, and every human aboard felt a profound connection.
Thoughts were shared without words.
Memories surfaced unbidden, and understanding came as a rush of clarity. Dr. Koval realized that the intelligence did not need speech. It communicated through consciousness itself, weaving knowledge and emotion into every pulse of energy. The first conversation was unlike anything humanity had ever experienced.
The beacon did not speak, it resonated.
It asked questions, posed challenges, and offered insights into the nature of existence. The crew realized that it could access their minds, not to manipulate, but to guide. Every answer, every thought, every act of comprehension became part of an ongoing dialogue.
Humanity was learning not only about the universe but about itself.
Days turned into weeks as aurora remained near the beacon, exploring the structures it projected. Crew members began to perceive realities beyond the familiar three dimensions. They experienced time as fluid, witnessing events from billions of years in the past and future simultaneously. They felt the pulse of galaxies as if the cosmos were alive, breathing in rhythm with the intelligence that had called Earth by name. Yet, alongside the wonder came subtle warnings. The beacon conveyed that the universe was not uniform. There were regions of chaos, forces beyond human control, and intelligence that might not be benevolent. The lessons became more urgent. The crew understood that knowledge came with responsibility. The same signal that welcomed them also prepared them for challenges no earthbound civilization had ever faced. Dr. Koval kept a journal, noting every sensation, every revelation, and every challenge. She realized that the signal was teaching patience as much as comprehension. Humanity's survival depended not only on technology but on empathy, unity, and the capacity to see beyond self-interest. Each member of the crew was being transformed, not merely as an explorer, but as a participant in a cosmic consciousness that spanned galaxies. Then, one day, the beacon offered something entirely unexpected. A projection appeared of a small blue planet, rotating slowly in the void. The loom emphasized a single word in every human language aboard: home. It was Earth. The intelligence had observed humanity for millennia, waiting for the moment when they could be ready to understand their place in the cosmos. The signal was a test, a preparation, and a gift all at once. Dr. Koval felt tears fill her eyes. Humanity had been named, guided, and welcomed by something older and wiser than imagination. Yet she also felt the weight of responsibility. Knowledge could not be hoarded, and understanding could not be abused. The universe had offered humanity a chance to participate in a greater story, but the next steps would demand courage, humility, and wisdom beyond anything humanity had yet known. As Aurora continued to orbit the beacon, the crew understood the truth. This was not the end of the journey but the beginning. Beyond the edge of the known universe, the intelligence that had called Earth by name awaited humanity's response, not in words or weapons, but in thought, action, and understanding. And in that vast, silent expanse, a fragile blue planet seemed both impossibly small and infinitely precious. Humanity had answered the call, and now, the cosmos waited for what it would do next. As Aurora lingered near the beacon, the crew began to grasp the magnitude of what they had discovered. The intelligence that had reached out to Earth was not merely a civilization or a species, it was a consciousness spanning scales that humans could barely comprehend. It existed in patterns of energy, light, and thought, weaving through galaxies, observing life, and shaping realities in ways that were invisible yet profound. Humanity had entered a dialogue with a mind that was older than the stars themselves. The loom of the cosmos continued to evolve, now offering glimpses into phenomena humanity had only theorized. The crew saw the birth of stars, the slow collapse of galaxies, and the invisible threads connecting matter and energy across unimaginable distances. Each projection carried lessons, revealing not just how the universe worked, but why it had formed the way it did. It was a guide to existence itself, teaching humanity to think in ways that transcended the limits of language, culture, and even biology. But the intelligence also conveyed caution. Not all beings in the universe were benevolent. The loom revealed pockets of chaos where civilizations had perished, consumed by forces beyond understanding or driven to ruin by their own hubris. It was a subtle reminder: knowledge and power without wisdom could destroy as easily as it could create. The crew understood that humanity's journey was not only about exploration but about preparing for the responsibilities that came with the awareness they had been granted. The transformations among the crew were profound. Each person experienced the signal differently. Some gained extraordinary insight into physics and mathematics, understanding equations that described the fundamental nature of reality in ways humans had never imagined. Others experienced visions of consciousness expanding beyond the self, feeling interconnected with every living being in the galaxy. Some struggled to maintain their sanity, grappling with sensations and knowledge that exceeded human perception. Dr. Koval documented everything meticulously. She knew that these records would be humanity's first account of interacting with intelligence beyond their comprehension. Yet she also understood the deeper truth. The knowledge they received was not simply for documentation or study. It was meant to change them, to prepare them for the choices and challenges that awaited as they moved farther into the cosmos. Then, one day, a new layer of the loom appeared, one that the crew had not anticipated. It displayed not just physical phenomena, but questions, puzzles, and riddles, testing their reasoning and intuition. The beacon did not provide answers immediately. Instead, it challenged humanity to think in ways they had never been required to before. Each solution led to new revelations, each failure revealed subtle lessons. It was a cosmic school, and humanity was its student. The intelligence also shared glimpses of other civilizations it had observed, some thriving, some fallen. Through these glimpses, the crew learned that life in the universe often followed patterns of emergence, growth, and decline, shaped by the interplay of intelligence, curiosity, and survival. Humanity began to understand that being seen by the universe carried both privilege and peril. They were no longer isolated. Their actions, decisions, and growth were now part of a much larger tapestry, one that could span millennia and galaxies. Despite the profound lessons, a sense of urgency began to grow. The loom hinted at something beyond their current understanding, a convergence point, a destination at the edge of space and time where knowledge, consciousness, and reality itself intersected. It was as if the intelligence was guiding humanity toward a place where it could truly measure its own potential and face the consequences of its choices. Dr. Koval and her crew realized that they were standing at the threshold of something far greater than a mere encounter. Humanity had been invited to participate in the shaping of the universe, to contribute to a dialogue that stretched across the cosmos and across time. The beacon's signals were no longer merely instructions or lessons. They were a challenge, asking humanity whether it was ready to understand, to grow, and to act in ways that were responsible, compassionate, and wise. The vastness of the cosmos, once distant and unknowable, now felt intimate. Humanity's place in it was no longer insignificant. Every choice, every thought, every act of comprehension mattered. Dr. Koval felt the weight of this truth deeply. Earth had been called by name, and in answering, humanity had begun a journey that would define its destiny for generations. And still, the ultimate purpose of the signal remained just beyond reach. The loom suggested that the answers were not yet ready to be revealed. The beacon was not a teacher of finished truths, but a guide to ongoing discovery. Humanity had taken the first steps into a conversation that would continue as long as it had the courage and vision to listen. As the days stretched into weeks, the crew prepared for the next stage of the journey. The loom had shown them glimpses of phenomena and regions beyond the edge of comprehension, and Dr. Koval knew that the universe's challenges would become more complex and more demanding. Humanity had been named, observed, and invited. Now, the true test of understanding, and of choice, was approaching. The signal pulsed gently, like a heartbeat, reminding them that Earth, fragile and vibrant, had been the spark that called the attention of something vast and eternal. Humanity had answered, but the journey beyond the edge of the known universe was only beginning. And in the infinite darkness, where light and consciousness intertwined, the question remained. Would humanity rise to the challenge and embrace the destiny that awaited? The loom had grown more complex, and with its complexity came the first true challenge for humanity. The beacon pulsed rhythmically, sending waves of energy that tested both the ship's technology and the crew's minds. It was not a threat in the traditional sense, but a trial designed to push humanity beyond its limits. The signals manifested as distortions in space, pockets where physics behaved unpredictably. Gravity twisted, light bent in impossible ways, and time seemed to fluctuate. The crew realized that the universe itself was the test, and they were participants. Dr. Koval convened the team in the observation chamber. "This is not danger," she said quietly, her voice steady despite the unease around her. "It is learning. The intelligence wants us to perceive differently, to act beyond instinct and habit. We must adapt, not resist." The crew nodded, understanding that their survival depended on both courage and insight. Every action, every calculation, every decision mattered in ways they were only beginning to comprehend. The first trials were subtle. Navigation systems failed in regions where light and gravity no longer obeyed conventional rules. Time-lapses created illusions of events occurring before or after they logically should. Crew members had visions of their own lives, choices made and not made, paths taken and ignored, and were forced to confront fears, regrets, and hopes simultaneously. It was as if the loom reached inside them, revealing their consciousness as a tool, a resource, and a responsibility. The physical challenges escalated. The ship passed through areas of fluctuating energy density, where the hull seemed to shimmer and bend. The crew had to rely on intuition guided by the loom, aligning the ship's path with patterns of resonance visible only in the signal. It was as though the beacon communicated a geometry of survival, one that could not be calculated but only perceived, felt, and understood. Humanity's instincts alone were no longer sufficient. They had to think with perception, with awareness, with the subtle guidance of the intelligence that had called Earth by name. Yet the trials were not purely external. The loom began to pose moral and ethical dilemmas, questions embedded in the patterns that challenged human judgment. Crew members encountered projections of civilizations, some thriving, some destroyed, and were asked to make decisions that affected the outcomes. The lessons were clear. Intelligence was not merely a tool for knowledge, but for understanding the consequences of action. Every choice resonated beyond immediate perception, carrying implications across time, space, and consciousness. Dr. Koval kept her composure, guiding the crew through the uncertainties. She realized that the beacon's tests were both scientific and spiritual. Humanity was learning to navigate not only the cosmos but its own essence, confronting the limitations of ego, fear, and ambition. The signal demanded unity, empathy, and clarity of thought. Without these qualities, the trials could become overwhelming, even fatal. Then came the moment of profound revelation. The loom projected a scenario in which Earth itself appeared, threatened by forces beyond comprehension, cosmic events that could destroy the planet in an instant. The crew was not being asked to intervene physically. They could not. Instead, the test was one of understanding. Could humanity perceive the interconnectedness of life, the delicate balance between action and consequence, and the responsibility of intelligence in a vast universe? The crew struggled, some failing at first, overwhelmed by the enormity of the vision. But gradually, insight emerged. They realized that the trials were not about avoiding destruction but about comprehension. The intelligence sought to teach humanity that survival depended on perception, cooperation, and awareness of forces both internal and external. To succeed, they had to expand their consciousness, think collectively, and act as one organism guided by knowledge, empathy, and reason. Through the loom, they received guidance on techniques to align thought and action. Time became more manageable. Space became navigable through intuition and resonance. Crew members began to communicate silently, sensing each other's awareness and responding in perfect coordination. The ship itself seemed to respond, shifting and flowing through the distortions as if it were an extension of the crew's collective consciousness. Humanity was learning to think on a scale previously unimaginable, integrating mind, matter, and energy into a single understanding. Finally, after cycles of challenges that felt like years yet only lasted weeks, the loom pulsed in a pattern that indicated completion. The trials had been passed, not through brute force or technology, but through comprehension, unity, and wisdom. The intelligence acknowledged their growth with a signal that resonated deeply in every human heart aboard Aurora. You have seen. You have understood. You may proceed. For Dr. Koval and her crew, the sensation was indescribable. They had crossed the first threshold, emerging transformed and attuned to realities far beyond the edge of human knowledge. The universe no longer felt unknowable or indifferent. Humanity had been named, observed, and prepared. The next stage awaited, a region of the cosmos where knowledge, consciousness, and existence intersected, promising revelations that would redefine what it meant to be human. And still, Earth remained at the center of their thoughts. The planet that had sent them on this journey, that had inspired the intelligence to reach across billions of light-years, was fragile, vibrant, and alive. Humanity's responsibility was clear: to understand, to learn, and to honor the gift that had been offered, the chance to participate in the grand conversation of the cosmos. Beyond the edge of the known universe, the signal pulsed gently, like a heartbeat, guiding Aurora onward. And humanity listened, ready for the next lesson in the story of existence itself. After surviving the trials, the crew of Aurora felt a mixture of exhilaration and anticipation. The loom pulsed steadily, its patterns no longer merely tests, but a path, a guide to the ultimate destination. Dr. Koval sensed that they were approaching the heart of the intelligence, the place from which Earth had been named and the reason why the signal had reached across unimaginable distances. Humanity had passed the threshold, but what awaited them now was beyond comprehension. The journey through the final corridor of space was unlike anything the crew had experienced. Light bent in impossible arcs, and stars appeared as shimmering threads, stretched across the void like cosmic veins. Space itself seemed alive, responding to their presence. The beacon's influence extended everywhere, shaping the environment not with force, but with awareness. Every movement, every thought, resonated with the patterns, as if the universe were aware of humanity's consciousness in real time. Then, for the first time, the intelligence revealed itself fully. It was not a being in the sense humans understood. No body, no face, no voice. Instead, it was a convergence of light, energy, and thought, a presence that filled the entirety of perception. Dr. Koval felt it before she saw it, a profound awareness that touched every memory, every idea, and every emotion aboard Aurora. It was both comforting and overwhelming, ancient and immediate, vast yet intimate. The first communication was direct, not through symbols or projections, but through understanding itself. Humanity did not hear words, they experienced meaning. We have watched. We have waited.
You have been named because you are ready to know. The message echoed across every consciousness aboard the vessel, yet it felt personal, as though each individual were being addressed alone. The intelligence revealed the reason for the call. Earth was unique not because of its technology, its history, or even its species, but because of potential. Humanity possessed a capacity for curiosity, compassion, and imagination that was rare across the cosmos. It was fragile yet resilient, capable of both destruction and creation, and it had reached a point where it could begin to understand its place in a greater cosmic network. The signal was an invitation, not a command, to join a conversation that spanned eons and galaxies. Dr. Koval and her crew felt the weight of this revelation. They were not mere explorers. They were emissaries, representatives of an entire species, chosen to witness and participate in something far larger than themselves. The intelligence did not impose. It offered guidance, knowledge, and perspective. It presented humanity with the opportunity to see the universe not as a series of objects to study, but as a living, interconnected entity of thought, energy, and consciousness.
Then came the moment of choice.
The loom projected multiple paths, each representing a different approach to knowledge, growth, and engagement with the cosmos. Some paths were safe, slow, and structured, leading to understanding through careful study and observation. Others were wild, risky, and transformative, promising insight that could change humanity fundamentally but at great peril. Dr. Koval understood that this was the ultimate test, not a test of intelligence, strength, or courage alone, but of vision, wisdom, and unity. The crew debated and reflected. Each person contributed insights shaped by their experiences, fears, and hopes. Slowly, a consensus emerged, guided by the principles the loom had taught: empathy, awareness, curiosity, and humility. They chose a path that embraced understanding and transformation, a route that would expand humanity's perception and prepare them to participate fully in the network of consciousness the intelligence had revealed. As Aurora moved along the chosen path, the environment shifted dramatically. Time and space became malleable, and the ship experienced phenomena that defied description. Past, present, and potential futures seemed to coexist. The crew saw visions of Earth, of other civilizations, and of possibilities that spanned both beauty and peril. Yet through it all, the loom maintained harmony, guiding humanity with precision and care. Dr. Koval realized that the purpose of the journey had never been merely to travel across space. The purpose was to evolve. The intelligence that had named Earth had been preparing humanity to perceive existence in its truest form, to understand the delicate balance between awareness, action, and consequence. Humanity had been invited not to dominate the universe, but to understand it and contribute consciously to its unfolding. Finally, the signal pulsed with a deep resonance, one that reverberated through every molecule, thought, and emotion aboard Aurora. It was a culmination of all the lessons, trials, and insights, a recognition of humanity's readiness to participate fully in the cosmic dialogue. The beacon's presence remained vast and luminous, but it no longer tested. They had arrived at the threshold of comprehension. Dr. Koval looked out at the luminous expanse surrounding them. The intelligence that had reached across billions of light-years had not merely called Earth by name. It had seen, taught, and trusted humanity. The journey had transformed them all. And as the crew reflected on the fragile blue planet that had begun it all, they understood that the real voyage was only beginning. A voyage of consciousness, responsibility, and connection with the living universe. The edge of the known universe was no longer a boundary. It had become a doorway to understanding, to dialogue, and to a destiny far beyond the limitations of time, space, and imagination. And humanity, named, seen, and guided, stepped forward into the infinite. The journey home was unlike any departure humanity had ever experienced. Aurora glided back through the pathways of light and resonance that the beacon had revealed, carrying not just the crew but a transformed humanity within them. Every thought, every perception, every memory had been reshaped by the intelligence that had called Earth by name. The loom continued to pulse gently, a reminder that understanding was a process, not a destination, and that every act of awareness had consequences beyond comprehension. Earth itself seemed different as the vessel approached. From orbit, the planet looked the same, fragile and blue, yet everything about it felt new. Humanity had been named, guided, and tested, and now it carried a consciousness expanded far beyond its prior limitations. The crew understood that their return would not be merely a physical event, it would mark the beginning of a new era for every human being on the planet below. Knowledge, awareness, and responsibility were now shared across species and continents, and even the smallest choices would resonate far beyond the horizon of individual perception. Dr. Lena Koval addressed the crew, her voice calm and firm. "We have been called, we have seen, and we have learned. But our journey is not over. The real work begins now." The intelligence did not just name Earth, it trusted us to act, to think, and to grow. "Our mission is to bring what we have learned back to humanity, to show that we are part of a larger story, one that stretches beyond stars, galaxies, and time itself." The crew nodded, feeling the weight and the beauty of their responsibility. As Aurora descended toward Earth, the signal from the beacon remained, no longer a distant mystery but a constant companion. It pulsed in harmony with life, a reminder that consciousness, curiosity, and empathy were threads woven into the fabric of the cosmos. Humanity's journey into the unknown had transformed fear into wonder, ignorance into insight, and isolation into connection. Every human being, consciously or unconsciously, had been touched by the act of being named and observed by an intelligence older than the universe itself. The arrival on Earth was quiet, but it carried immense significance. News of the mission's success spread quickly, not just as information but as a wave of inspiration. People everywhere looked to the stars with renewed understanding, realizing that humanity was no longer alone, that it had been recognized and prepared for a destiny far greater than survival or conquest. Civilization itself began to shift, guided by the lessons the crew brought back. Cooperation over conflict, curiosity over complacency, and awareness over ignorance. Dr. Koval reflected on the journey. The beacon had taught them that the universe was neither indifferent nor hostile, but vast, intelligent, and deeply interconnected. To perceive it fully, humanity needed more than science or technology. It needed vision, empathy, and courage. To exist meaningfully, humans had to act not merely as individuals or nations, but as participants in a living, conscious cosmos. The act of being named had changed everything. The loom continued to pulse softly, visible now only through instruments but sensed by those who had touched it directly. Humanity had been invited into a cosmic conversation that would continue indefinitely. The intelligence had not dictated what humanity must do, but it had given knowledge, perspective, and opportunity. The choice, and the responsibility, was now entirely human. Dr. Koval stood on the observation deck, gazing at the stars. She thought of the billions of years the universe had existed before Earth even formed, and of the intelligence that had reached across that vastness to call their planet by name. She thought of the crew, forever changed, and of humanity below, poised at the threshold of a new understanding. And she knew, with absolute clarity, that the journey had only just begun. Earth had been named, and in answering, humanity had stepped beyond fear, beyond isolation, and beyond the limits of the known universe. The stars were no longer distant points of light, they were part of a conversation, a living web of intelligence, possibility, and connection. And in that infinite expanse, humanity had found its place, not as masters, not as conquerors, but as participants in the unfolding story of existence itself. The signal pulsed once more, gentle and unwavering, carrying a single truth across the cosmos. Earth had been seen, and the universe was waiting, patient and infinite, for what humanity would do next.